welcome to this as far as live streaming goes. So, we'll see how this one ends up being. Also, it's kind of convenient because I've got my computer, so I can actually answer comments and look at the chat. So that is all good. So, as the title says, analyzing Disney shows as a writer. Oh, hello, welcome. So as the title says, analyzing Disney shows as a writer. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys have already seen a lot of the Disney Plus shows that are out there, and I know that a lot of this is just going to be kind of stuff that you've probably seen a little bit on the internet, but I finally got Disney Plus, and so now I'm actually looking at these shows from a completely new light and from a completely just brand new perspective, and there's a lot of things that I was looking at a lot of comments that people have been made about some of these various shows. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't, but I thought it'd be really fun just to take a look at some of these shows from more of a kind of writer perspective. So, like I said, there's a lot of shows, and Marvel and Star Wars are the ones that I love the most, so they're the ones that I'm going to be focusing on, and I'm going to start right now with The Bad Batch. I am a huge fan of this show. Like, even going back just to season 7 of The Clone Wars, that's where we get first introduced to The Bad Batch. What I love about the show, just starting off, all the clones are voiced by the same actor. Literally all of the original Regulation clones, all of the Bad Batch clones, even though the voices sound quite a bit different, they're all the same person. So I love the fact that the one guy was able to actually take all these different characters and just give them all their own persona by using the same voice. It's absolutely insane. So this guy, he's already fantastic. Now, what I also really love about the Bad Batch, and then tying that into the Clone Wars, they did a really, really good job of just talking about all those things that happened in between episode 2 and episode 3, which technically is about 2 to 3 years. I think that's officially how long the Clone Wars actually last. So there's a lot of stuff, not just including Anakin's rise from a Padawan to a Jedi Knight. There's a lot of stuff. I'm just going to turn this a little bit. There we go. There's a lot of stuff about the relations between the clones and the Jedi. There's a lot of stuff about Ahsoka Tano, which we'll get into that show in a little bit. But, there's a lot of elements in there. And one of the things that I love that they did was they were able to take the clones and give them all individual personalities and just really, really draw on that. So when you come to the Bad Batch, they're so much different, and I love the fact that they are essentially messed up, and that's their defining trait, but because they're so good at what they do, they can just stand out on their own. I love the way that in a very short amount of time, they're able to bring out all of the characteristics and give them something defining. They did absolutely fantastic on that. Another little thing that you're going to notice, I really love the fact that the animation style is the same as for the Clone Wars. It doesn't feel like it's a completely different show. It's tied into it pretty nicely there. But what I love the most that Bad Batch actually does is they take the post-Order 66 and they really get into exploring what that looks like for clones. And oh my gosh, I have never felt so nothing for a clone and then hating clones and then feeling so bad for clones than I have just because of this show. So in the original series, the Clone Wars, the clones are just kind of bodies that are there. They're just bodies that are essentially existing for the sole purpose of fighting, nothing more. And then Order 66 happens, and there's this complete shift in their persona. There's a complete shift in their characterization, a complete shift in how they behave, and it's more than just they're turning on the Jedi. They're actually changing their personalities quite a bit, and even turning on other people that they wouldn't normally. And it's a really fantastic thing because you've got these clones again, same person doing them, and the character immediately just becomes something so much different. So then that's Order 66. Well, the Bad Batch starts right when Order 66 happens. And so we see these clones that they have their inhibitor chip. Something happened in the process, so that something's messed up. So when Order 66 happens, they're unaffected. They continue going about their own stuff, with the exception of one. One of the Bad Batch guys, Crosshair, he had Order 66 actually work in there, and so he actually was reacting to it. But then it does talk about, also, I feel I need to say, I'm going to be giving some spoilers, so if you're not, if you don't like spoilers, then don't worry about this. But anyways, he gets his chip removed at one point, and his character is just absolutely insane with that. So Order 66 happens, and they actually see the clones turn on the Jedi, and they do their stuff to actually try to get the last Jedi that they basically have and try to get them out of there. Absolutely, awesome, especially because we find out that he's Kanan Jarrus, which we see later on in Rebels. So then with the series, it really talks about what happens to the clones after Order 66. And you see that the Empire just came about. They really try to get rid of the clones as much as possible. They're trying to just phase them out. They're cutting out the Camino facility. They're getting rid of all of the basically all of the new batches coming in, and they're replacing them with stormtroopers, like literally replacing with stormtroopers. And the general acceptance is that the clones are lesser beings, and so you really see a lot of prejudice going on with them. You see the Empire starts treating the clones as lesser citizens. You see the way that the Empire treats other citizens in a lesser capacity, and it's becomes much more of a tyrannical dictatorship, much more of an oppressive dictatorship. Again, all using just the one main individual. And what's really fantastic is you really get to see these clone characters now having their own feelings, having their own compassions for the other clones. You see them having to fight each other all the time, but what's hilarious, or not even hilarious, what's a really awesome touch is that anytime the Bad Batch goes up against other clone troopers, their guns are set for stun. They obviously have this connection to their other brothers, which they always call them. And anytime they go against other clone troopers, their guns are set for stun. I love that little detail, especially because when they go against other stormtroopers, they're set to kill. It's a completely different mindset. When they go against other officers, set to stun or kill, depending on what works best. But anytime they go against other clone troopers, their guns are set to stun. I love that little detail. It just really goes to show that even though they have become the enemy, they still have that connection. They still have that tie. So, again, it's a small detail, but I thought it's absolutely fantastic. One other thing that that Bad Batch does that I really enjoyed, and the Clone Wars, it had a slight difference in this aspect, but in the Clone Wars, because it was taking place over so much, they followed lots of individual stories all over the galaxy of things that happened during the Clone Wars. And so you had some storylines that would be continuous, but for the most part, they were telling what happened in the galaxy at that time. So we might follow Obi-Wan, we might follow Anakin, we might follow Ahsoka, we might follow Rex. It all varies. With the Bad Batch, they keep it specifically to the Bad Batch characters. Now, during the Bad Batch season, I'm also going to give a little bit more spoilers on here. There are times where the batch actually does separate and they do split up, and so then they do have to follow two different trains of thought going on with that. That's fair. I really like the fact that they keep it much more of a straight storyline as opposed to the Clone Wars. So if you are looking for a character-based series, hands down, I recommend watching it. As far as the, let's see, there's actually a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed about the Clone Wars. Yeah, I will say, yeah. Give me a second. I will say one of the things that I really enjoyed a whole lot was they also made the idea of the Empire not a bad thing. And this is something that they explored in the expanded universe a lot, but the average citizen did not have a problem with the Empire. The average citizen looked at the Empire as a way to keep peace in the galaxy, to have stability, to have jobs. And that was one thing about the Stormtrooper project. It gave a bunch of people that were basically out of work and not doing well financially, gave them a way to not just contribute but also to get ahead and kind of make a name for themselves. So for the average person, the Empire actually was not bad. That being said, it did encourage other things like slavery and encouraged the actual genocide of the Jedi. You had the Inquisitors going around causing fear and terror, and Darth Vader was always bad, but there were a lot of things that were not good, except one thing that we always kind of forget when it comes to stories. We'll look at it from a perspective of a main character, and the Jedi were the main characters. So of course to the Jedi, the Empire was bad. But again, for the average citizen, it actually was not a terrible thing. And so you have one character, this is a big spoiler, but Crosshair. Crosshair, he was one that originally tried to kill the Jedi because of Order 66. He got his inhibitor chip removed, and then he was able to think on his own. But he actually chose the Empire rather than leave and go with his Bad Batch guys, because he personally believed in what the Empire was doing. Now, it was later on when he saw how other clones were being treated, he started to change his character, and they took him from a very gruff, very soldier individual, and they gave him the ability to think, which I love. I love that he was thinking about what the Empire means. I love that he was thinking about what the Empire stood for. He was thinking about how the Empire was treating his brothers, and he made a conscious decision from the inside that this was not what I had signed up for, and recognizing that, he made a decision to act against it. So in a way, he was kind of one of the first rebels that actually existed. He did get punished for it, but you gotta respect someone seeing the Empire initially and liking what it stood for, and then as they got more into it, then they started to change. And that's something you don't see a lot in stories. Like, you really don't see that kind of character. More often than not, you'll have this black and white setup, and one side is very much the bad guys, one side is very much the good guys, and you draw your line in the very beginning, but more often than not, that's not how life is. We'll go through, we might take one side because we agree with it at the time, and then other information comes in, other situations come in, other things change, and then suddenly that's what we had before turns out to not actually be what it is. And so Crosshair was allowed to change. Granted, he did have consequences for his actions, which is also awesome, because you have this character now that understood how important it is, decided, yeah, it's worth the risk, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So, and the thing is too, it's a cartoon. So it's not one of those shows that people expect are going to be all that deep. But really, there's a whole lot going on with there. And I would highly, highly encourage, if you have not seen it yet, I would really encourage you to watch it. I would encourage you to start with the beginning episodes of season 7 of the Clone Wars, because that's where you first get introduced to those guys. And then, you know, after them, if you want to suffer the pain and heartbreak, then yeah, you can go ahead and watch the rest of the Clone Wars. But Bad Batch, hands down, absolutely fantastic. All right, so hello all of you who have just come in and just typed in. Welcome, welcome. So going on from there, so that's my take on Clone Wars and on Bad Batch. Highly, highly recommend. Now I'm going to go into some of the live action ones. So shifting away from Star Wars for a second, WandaVision. Like I said, huge Marvel fan, and Marvel did a really, really crazy thing back around WandaVision. They started to expand into their, basically into the expanded universe and start going more into the TV shows and shifting away from just the movies. So the cinematic universe then became quite a bit bigger. And one of the problems that I had with WandaVision was because I hadn't watched it and just shifted into Doctor Strange 2. So when I first watched Doctor Strange 2, I expected it was going to be a continuation of Doctor Strange, and you wouldn't need any other info going in. Well, then suddenly we have Wanda, and she's essentially evil, and it's like, where in the world did this come from? And so what they did that was brilliant but also frustrating was they let the TV show be part of canon and actually be a central part of canon. Unfortunately, this meant that for a long time I did not have that story, so having that connection go on did not exist, and so it was frustrating to watch Doctor Strange, watching this character Wanda. I really love her character. I thought she was absolutely awesome in all the movies that she had been a part of, and even though I was a little bit lost for a while, I thought she did fantastic in Doctor Strange 2. But watching WandaVision, it made so much more sense. So one thing that I absolutely loved about WandaVision was they kept her theme going throughout the entire thing of, here is a person that has lost the love of her life, and she wants to basically get back everything that she's lost. You know, she has lost her brother, she has lost, like I said, she's lost Vision, she's lost essentially the trust of the world, she doesn't really know where she fits into things, and she's one of the most powerful people physically out there, so she's really, really struggling. I love the fact that as the kind of lead into this, she goes to this one small town, and the house that she goes to was actually a house that Vision had purchased for her. Now, I don't get all the exact technicalities on where they got the money, all that kind of stuff, but long and short, Vision had basically purchased a house for them to be able to live in and be able to exist in, and she went there and had a kind of a painful moment of just pain creating a life that she wanted, I guess is the best way to put it. So it all made sense in the context of the comics. Another thing to remember that's important about Wanda's character is she is one who can manipulate reality. She is one of the most powerful characters in the comics, and she can just alter reality to fit how she wants it to be. And so she basically altered reality around this entire town in order to create this idea, this family, this setting that she wanted. And she didn't realize she was doing it. That's another thing. So it's always crazy when you give these people powers and then suddenly expect them to be able to do stuff with them. Yeah. But, you know, it is what it is. And so with this show, you really got to see her as a character that was grieving. You really got to see her power. You really got to see what happens when she gets out of control. So they did fantastic with that. I really loved the way that they had Vision in there, as even though he was a character that was essentially created, he was still his own person. And the end, and this is, again, spoilers, but it ties really into the second Doctor Strange one. She starts to learn a little bit more about who she is and about her destiny as being basically a person that is created through chaos magic and destined to be what is called the Scarlet Witch, that can essentially do whatever she wants to do. So that's pretty cool. And then they also created this idea of a book that is filled with dark magic that can do things that are even more terrible than she had already been doing. And at the end of the whole thing, she realizes what she's doing. She realizes that she's just creating a reality that she wanted and unfortunately doesn't actually exist anymore. She uses the book to start getting into the multiverse of things and start opening things up to the different worlds that are possibly out there. And then when we come into Doctor Strange 2, her whole mindset is she wants to essentially leave that one reality, get into a reality that she can have everything that she wanted. And so really it's a pursuit to find what she's lost and kind of reclaim what she has lost. We find out later on that she manifested children, and she kind of, as far as the comics go, she sort of created children that would not exist normally, but she altered like I said, altered reality, altered chance, altered just everything's probability so that it could happen. And so now she's trying to find the multiverse that would allow her to have her kids. And so you've got this character that is driven by loss and continually driven by loss, and her whole pursuit is to reclaim what was lost. And so then when you come into Doctor Strange 2, she's evil, but there is so much going on behind it, and she's not just a evil for evil's sake. So that was one thing that was really awesome that the series did. And unfortunately, because I hadn't watched the series before I watched Doctor Strange 2, I completely missed all of that, and so that whole character arc was gone. And you know, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I'm kind of in the mindset of the movies. You shouldn't have to watch the TV shows in order to get the complete story, just because of all of the other stuff that's going on out there, and letting the TV shows be a separate thing. But again, at the same time, I also respect that they let it be not just canon, but also essential canon, and went from there. So that was cool. Another thing, I really love the way that they were able to bring in side characters and actually turn them into major points. Hello, hello. I love the fact that they were able to tie in Ant-Man by having the FBI guy. They were able to tie in Thor by having her. They were able to basically create another character that would have a spin-off and go into the Marvel's stuff. I haven't actually watched those, but I know that she has an appearance later on. And so you're able to tie these universes together, and that was really good. I thought that was a really awesome tie because yeah, I loved Ant-Man. I loved that they were able to make that part of everything and not just some standalone bit. So they did fantastic there. I loved the fact too that he was allowed to be a strong character. I did think that in Ant-Man they made him a little bit too kind of comic-y, I guess, maybe to let Scott stand out a little bit more. But no, I thought that honestly, having him as an FBI director, kind of lead agent, having a little bit more authority, I thought it was really nice to see him in that position. I thought it was really nice to see, wow, I can't remember her name, and I'm gonna get so much flack on this one, but yeah, from Darcy, there we go, Darcy from Thor, yeah. I love that she was able to have her own spot and have her own character and not be overshadowed by Thor or by Jane. I love that she was actually able to show off her brilliance and not just be a comic relief. Also, I really love Darcy's character just in general. So yeah, just putting that out there. I really thought that they could do a little bit more with some of those guys, but you know, you can only do so much in a series, and I think it'd be really cool to see what they do with those characters later on down the line. It definitely set things up for it, but otherwise, I was really satisfied that they didn't ruin them. That's the thing. So many times, characters, they just kind of get ruined by doing a lot of the same old stuff, by rehashing old jokes. That was another thing. They did the card trick. I can't do the card trick, but they did the, you know, close-up magic. They tied that in. I thought that was really awesome. Little details. So, WandaVision. I love that show. I thought that they did a fantastic job. I especially love the way that they did Agatha Harkness. Now, there's going to be some debate on this one because in the comics, she's old. She looks old. But in the show, they made her look young. You know what? I thought it worked. I thought it worked for the setup. I thought it worked for the scenario. I thought it worked for her character. I thought it worked out well. I was not dissatisfied. So I thought they did that well. Batman is better than the whole Marvel franchise. Well, to each their own. To each their own. All right. So going on from there. So I've already done one Star Wars. I've already done one Marvel Vision. So let's look at this from a writing perspective. So in the Clone Wars are taking place over a long 2-year period of time. You can have a lot of individual storylines going on. To me, the Clone Wars is basically treated as a series of short stories. A bunch of short stories that take place in the same universe, all put together into one single book. Very similar in concept to The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. And if you haven't read The Martian Chronicles, I would highly suggest you do so. It is absolutely awesome. It is very hilarious at times, but basically it is a series of stories that start with humans first landing on Mars, and then the colonization of Mars, and then all the stuff that ends up going with just all of that. But they're all a bunch of little short stories, and one short story might tie in with another one. It might be a few days after one. It might be around the same time period as another, but they all take place in the same concept. So that's pretty much like the Clone Wars. Whereas the Bad Batch is more of a continuous storyline. I'm a huge fan of continuous storylines, but I also like the idea of short story analogy or anthologies. So if one is your preference, go for it. If another is your preference, awesome. But they both got value. Personally, with my stories, Firebrand, I follow one single line for all the Firebrand series, and it tells that story. I've got some other plans for other things that might happen in the universe, and I think it might be cool to do little short stories of things that are happening at some point in there. But, that'll be for another time. For the most part, I'm following a single line, and so that's what the Bad Batch is. You get to see these characters, you get to develop these characters. Every episode follows from the previous one, so it ties in there like that. And they have a really good pacing. I really enjoy that we have time to actually get into these characters. We actually have time to see little things like what these characters like, what these characters dislike. We get to see them actually develop relationships outside of their little unit. They're brothers, but you get to see how they interact with other people outside of that, and that's really cool. They introduce the character Omega, who is a little sister to them, and it's really awesome to see how they all respond differently to her. So you get to bring out personalities in completely different ways. With Bad Batch, one of the other really good things that they do is they let you actually see what these characters are thinking. They let you actually see what these characters are just really feeling. And a lot of people don't really give, thoughts and feelings as much credit, I think, as they really should. They call this internal dialogue. They call this, internal depth. And when you see a character that has thoughts and you see what they're thinking, you see what they're feeling, you see how they're reacting to situations, then it really helps to bring out who that character is, and it really helps establish them as a person to the author or to the reader. And this is really important because, like I said, every single Bad Batch character is voiced by the same person. They're literally made from the same mold, so they're literally the same person. But then circumstances or other other training brings out different things in them, other enhancements. They talk about how the Bad Batch, all of them were enhanced in different ways. So one was enhanced with increased senses, one was enhanced with greater intelligence, one was enhanced with greater strength, one was enhanced with greater accuracy. So they all have different things that they were enhanced by. And here's what's awesome. You take that one enhancement and they develop a character around it. They develop their individual strengths around what they're able to do. And then they let them be able to do this. And this is another thing that a lot of people, I think, have a problem with when it comes to characters. They want characters to be able to do everything, but that's not realistic. In a situation where you have all of these guys are soldiers, yes, they all better be able to shoot. They all better be able to have some form of combat ability. But then when you bring out their individual abilities, you look at stuff like the main character, Hunter. Well, I don't know if I would say main character, but he's the leader. So you got the character Hunter, and he genuinely cares about all of his soldiers. He genuinely knows what all of them are capable of. He knows how to command them, and they all listen to him. That's the other thing. They all listen to him. They're all willing to go along with what his plans are, but he recognizes all of their individual strengths, and he recognizes what they're all best able to do and how they're best able to do it. So one character, like I said, he's super strong. He's called Wrecker. He's got more of an aggressive personality, so he's more of a front lines individual. When you need to basically wreck something, you go with it. And what's really awesome is that he loves to wreck things. He loves to blow stuff up, but he also has that understanding that sometimes that's just not realistic, and sometimes he needs to hold back so that the range can take over. Another character, his name is Tech. He's again super intelligent. He's great when it comes to any kind of tech related stuff. So if they need to get someone into a computer, he will not be the main combatant. He will have other people try to get him in, kind of thing, and then he'll be able to do his job. Another character, Crosshair, I've already mentioned him before. He's fantastic with long range shooting, so he tends to be more of a loner character. So he would be more of the definition of the lone wolf that would work well in any of those kind of MMO games. You see a lot of times with role-playing games, they want to play a kind of edgy lone wolf character because it's dramatic and it's intense, and they feel that they're being edgy, but they're just kind of doing what everyone already does. Well, he's edgy, he's kind of aloof, he's kind of away from things, but he understands how to work in a team. And so he'll do his own thing by taking up a sniper spot, and he'll do his own thing by keeping an eye out for everything, but it works. You know, it genuinely works, and the characters understand this is what he can do and this is what he's great at doing, and so they allow him to do his thing. And that's another really awesome thing when it comes to Hunter as a commander. So many times you see leaders in book situations, they have to command everything. They have to be in charge of everything. If something is not in charge, then it's off. Well, Hunter, he lays out the guidelines, he lays out the plan, and he trusts his guys not only to do what they do best, but he trusts them to offer up suggestions, offer up ideas, offer up, Tech. He'll go and he'll say, all right, well, if we're going to do this, then I need to be able to access this, this, and this. Then they'll say, all right, is this even practical? Is this feasible? Well, not entirely sure. Okay, well, if you need to do this, what would have to happen? Well, I'd have to have a path cleared here. All right, we can do that, etc., etc. So they work together, and it's really awesome just to see that kind of leadership style. I love that. It's really awesome to see individuals that are able to contribute their own thing and have their own character in that way. And it's interesting because the way that their personalities are, you feel different things about all of them. And it's not one way is correct, not one way is incorrect. You have different opinions based on who the different characters are, and they do a fantastic job. Yes, this live stream is brought to you by coffee. Coffee makes the world go round and keeps me awake. Anyways, so yes, you have this idea of all these individual characters that are able to do all of their own things, but you also have these characters that have all of their individual weaknesses, and they're allowed to have these weaknesses. Because another thing that I found a lot of times, especially with young writers, is they've got these characters that can do awesome things, but they're afraid to have their characters be weak in some way. And that's one thing that's fantastic about the Bad Batch. Hunter, especially as a leader position, he knows what he can do. He also knows what he can't do. That's very, very important. He is so confident in what he cannot do that he has no problem having someone else who can do what they can do. He has absolutely no problem knowing that, yes, he might, he can plug in a data pad and he can then download stuff, but when it comes to hacking, he needs tech. When it comes to acts of physical strength, maybe he could try to struggle and be tough, but he knows that Wrecker can do it so much better, and so he doesn't have a problem having Wrecker step in. When it comes to shooting, yes, he has a rifle of his own. He also uses a vibro knife, but he has no problem knowing that having Crosshair in a sniper position makes things so much better for everyone, and he doesn't need to be that sniper. And so, way too many times, if you were to see a character in a in a book, especially in a young adult book from a young writer, they would do everything. They would be super strong, and they would have advanced technical or some kind of skill knowledge. They would have great long range and close range fighting ability, and they would be a leader. And they would have all of that all together in one single character, and it would just feel off. So Bad Batch does a fantastic job of taking all these roles that all these characters need to do and make them all individual roles that one person doesn't need to do. What's really awesome too is that then you'll have situations where one of those characters is not available, and suddenly the tactics have to change. Suddenly, if you were out Crosshair, for example, well, now you're missing out on the super long range. And so the mission now is centered around, okay, can we keep things all close together? If tech was not available, now suddenly it's centered around, well, who can do some of these things? And in some cases, they actually have to bring in outside help because they don't have the skill set that they did before. So that's all fine. When it comes to feats of strength, yeah, Wrecker can do a lot of stuff, and when Wrecker is not available, it basically takes 2 or 3 people to do the same thing. So it's pretty awesome. So when it comes to the Bad Batch, they did a fantastic job of developing characters, of having you care about characters, and then they did a fantastic job of giving you the clones that you originally felt one way about, and then completely altering how you feel about them. And you realize that when you look at just the Clone Wars in general, and you look at how the clones turn on the Jedi, so much of Star Wars is from a Jedi perspective. So therefore, the clones become the bad guys. But with the Bad Batch, the clones are still the good guys. You know, the Bad Batch are their clones, and so they're the good guys. And now suddenly they're looking at their brothers, the other clones, as essentially victims of a much bigger thing. And yeah, we find out that all of the reason they turned were because of the inhibitor chips that caused them to go crazy. Well, actually not even go crazy. Caused them to obey orders without question. It was just part of the programming. And so, in a lot of ways, the clones are actually the victims of this greater war, which is unbelievable. Like, it takes a whole lot of skill to make an enemy into a victim and into a sympathetic element. And so anytime you see now the clones, anytime you see any of the interactions between the Imperials and the clones, you feel bad for them because they're basically treated as lesser citizens. So yeah, the Clone Wars, hands down, or Bad Batch, absolutely love what they've done with the characters, and I would highly, highly recommend, if you are looking to actually write, if you're looking to actually create your own stories, I would highly recommend watching the Clone Wars, because again, perfect example of being able to create individual characters with individual motivations and having individual thoughts about them. So now I'm going to cycle back to WandaVision. And again, I absolutely love what they have done with her character, because going from the idea of the show itself, it's essentially a series of sitcoms that are all, every episode is basically a different kind of sitcom. And you watch them and you think, hey, this style looks familiar. Like, I recognize I Love Lucy. You recognize Malcolm in the Middle. You recognize, like, I think even like Full House, there was kind of similar style for one of those ones. So you see these old TV shows and you look at these styles and you think, okay, this is a cool idea, what's going on? And then you realize that she created this reality based on what made her happy when she was growing up, based on her character. And you see that all these TV shows, they're tied in with her childhood. And it's so much bigger than just we're doing one show and doing lots of different styles. They really thought about this whole lot. But we're going to look at her character just as an individual. And Wanda is, Wanda is insane because, like, not mentally, I'm just saying her character is unbelievably powerful, and the MCU did not really give her enough credit. She was basically just a character that could shoot bolts from her hands and could fly, and really there was not a lot more. But then in WandaVision, they really got to see, wait a second, she can literally alter reality. She can literally manipulate chance. She can do all those kind of things. And I also, yes, I really liked the way they're to take her and make her insanely powerful. But they also played off the idea that she's not evil. And this was something that I wish that could have been done a little bit better in between the last Avengers movie and Doctor Strange 2, but it just felt like she had a complete shift of being good and then suddenly being evil. But in WandaVision, you really got to see a character who is good and what it takes to make them into someone who is evil. They really did a fantastic job of character development. They really did a fantastic job of showing that her pain was what brought out her stuff. The fact that she couldn't control her powers made it work so much better, because if she could control things, then she would be more evil with her just individual side. But I don't even think she realized what she was doing until much later on. And then when she did finally release everyone, she was more surprised that it was happening as opposed to frustrated that she had to. And that was another really, really interesting thing. When she realized what she was doing, then it was super obvious that I've got these guys trapped in this world, and I didn't realize I was actually the one that was trapping them in this world. And so now, oh, crap. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna release you guys. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna completely do this. Until then, Agatha points out that part of that world that she had created also involved having Vision back, also involved having kids, and suddenly she had that unfortunate choice that all heroes have to. Do I pick the world or do I pick myself? And she ultimately decides, because she is a hero character, she ultimately decides that she has to give up everything that she personally wanted because, one, it wasn't real, and two, because the cost to everyone was too much. So in the last moment, when she realized, and this is a really important thing, when she realized what she was doing, she made a choice. And characters, when they are in stories, they're going to have situations, but what defines a character is going to be the choices that they make. And sometimes it's going to come down to one super pivotal choice that they have to make in the story. And so watching Wanda go through all of this process, watching this character that can essentially do anything that they wanted. And there wasn't really a way to stop her because she could control that whole world if she wanted. She had to consciously make the choice. And this is where stories come from. This is what makes stories as amazing as they are. When you have a character that makes choices that actually have consequences one way or the other, then now there's actually stakes involved. And so when you're writing characters, giving characters stakes, this is a good thing. Giving a character an opportunity to do good or do evil seems super obvious, but giving a character the opportunity to do basically something that will benefit one person as opposed to benefit another person, well, now you start to get a little bit tricky. It was very obvious that if it came down to like looking back at the original Avengers, looking at Endgame, it made a lot of sense that they had the opportunity to bring people back, and so they would want to. And Tony, he made a really great point of when he didn't want to try to bring people back, it was because there's another world here that exists now, and if we basically erase the 5 years, then we're erasing a world. You know, we are essentially erasing a people that have done their thing, that have existed, that have lived, that have fallen in love, that have had lives. And if you were to erase all of that, then is that good or is that bad? You know, even though they wouldn't have those lives if the other people had not disappeared, well, they have them now. So now there's that ultimate choice of who do you help? And so when he finally comes in, he finally says, okay, here's what I am going to do. It's not a matter of erasing what was, it's just bringing back those that were lost. And he's very, very clear that I can't get rid of what is. You know, I can't eliminate what was already here for something else. And I don't know if a lot of people really understand how big of a sacrifice that is, how big of an idea that actually is. And so then when you have Wanda, or then when you have Tony, he finally does decide to help, and they're very, very specific about when you snap and, you know, what you're going to do. You're only bringing people back. You're not changing anything else. This is all that you're doing. You're only bringing them back. You're not changing the past. So it's one thing to have essentially a no-stake decision. It's another thing to have a world-altering decision. And then there's something to be said about having a small-scale decision. And with Wanda, they really showed how important this decision is, because her character was one that had pretty much been alone for a long time, just had her brother, no one really else, didn't have her family because her family had been killed long ago. She had been experimented on because of her abilities. She was so alone, and then thrown into war situations. All she wanted was peace. And so then she created this town without realizing it, created a life that let her be with the person that she loved, something that everyone, you know, looks for, was able to have a family, again, something that a lot of people really look for and really want. She had everything, and then she had to make the decision to let that go, and that is huge. That is unbelievably huge, and I felt so bad for her character, because even though it was a reality that she was creating and wasn't actually real, it was still very real to her, and it was very real to the people that were in it, and it was a thing. And people will remember Vision. They will remember those kids existing. So it was not just I'm pressing reset on my game, I'm pressing rewind on this video. It's no, there's something that is here, and it's not going to be here anymore. So with WandaVision, having a character that you get to see the anguish, you get to see the pain, and you get to see their frustrations. It is a fantastic tool for making your characters come about a lot stronger. Let your characters experience tragedy. Let your characters experience pain. Let your characters experience joy. Let your characters experience struggle. Especially let them experience struggle. If they have to make a conscious decision between basically two choices, one that is good, one that is evil, well, that seems very, very simple and very kind of obvious. But what if it's not something like that? Or what if both choices are essentially evil? Getting rid of the person that you love, getting rid of your kids, that has an evil feel to it. Or enslaving an entire town, also evil. Which evil is going to be the one? And so what's really important to remember is that final decision, even though she decided that she was going to give the people back their lives, which was good, she still had that pain now of another kind of loss. And so her character arc in Doctor Strange 2, I didn't know this before watching it. It just felt kind of superficial in a lot of ways, but because of WandaVision, her arc was about trying to reclaim what she had lost and all the pain that she had already experienced and given up, trying to find a way to reconcile that. So really, it's a whole lot deeper than I originally thought. There's a whole lot more elements going on than I originally thought. And yeah, I really wish that I watched WandaVision before I watched Doctor Strange. I think that I would have appreciated Doctor Strange 2 so much more than I had. So as far as series go, yes, Bad Batch is one of my absolute favorites. Absolutely awesome. WandaVision, I was very impressed with what they were able to do. And another thing that I was really impressed with as far as WandaVision went was all of the other side characters that were in there. The way that they kind of lived one set of lives, and then when they were awoken, you really showed that there's still other characters in there. There's still other people, and those people have their own thoughts. They have their own desires. They have their own pain. They have their own worries. And when they were kind of exposed, or not exposed, but when they were free, when they were basically themselves in the world that Wanda had created, it really made Wanda look like the villain. And so many times, this is how a villain comes about. There's someone that they try to do things with the best of intentions and ends up becoming much worse. And so when you're creating your own characters, when you're creating your own villains, let them have good motivations in the very beginning. Let them have these desires that by themselves are not bad, but because of how things progress, they become bad. It's not a bad thing for Wanda to want to have the love of her life back. It's not a bad thing to want to have kids. It's not a bad thing to want to have a family. It's not a bad thing to want a place that she can call her own home. And so by creating it herself, you get the idea that she created this thing just kind of from nothing. But then when you realize oh no, she actually manipulated everyone that was already there, everything that was already there, and she has now accidentally trapped people. Now suddenly she's become the villain. And even though you never quite feel that she's a bad person for what she did, there was a lot of stuff that actually happened that was definitely that was definitely bad. And if you write your characters with that kind of mindset, you could turn a hero into a villain very, very easily. You could create a villain that all the world looks at and says they're obviously someone that's bad, and then allow a little bit of backstory to kind of rewind and show, no, wait a second, this guy started off good. Because one really awesome thing about doing that is you let people see that by doing certain choices, now suddenly they could go into a negative direction. By choosing certain actions, they could become a villain even though their intentions are good. And that is the villain that I think a lot of people are most terrified about. It's one thing to be super evil that you'll never be able to be, but to show what people could be, that is when things can get really interesting. So this was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed talking about these shows. Now, granted, there were only a couple shows that we talked about, but yeah, there was definitely a lot of stuff going on with those. So I just wanted to thank you guys for sticking around and for stopping by. I'm going to take a look at the comments a little bit, starting all the way at the top. Lots of people saying hello, hi, welcome, awesome. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for joining. See, Ronaldo. I'm gonna be honest, I don't follow soccer, so yeah, really sorry. What are we talking about? Like I said, I'm looking at a few different shows and kind of breaking them down as far as look at them from a writing perspective, look at them from character perspective, those kind of ideas. How am I? I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. All right, so some of you guys have been following this little part, but I have, for a long time, I had a series of day whatever of making some changes, and that was all about needing to lose about 40 pounds to do hernia surgery. So yeah, that series is over. I lost the weight, got the surgery, and unfortunately, I'm still in the recovery period. So as you can see, I'm up, I'm about, I'm able to do stuff, I'm able to walk around, yada, yada, yada. But one of the unfortunate things is I'm still very limited in how much I can lift. For at least another week or two, I'm still limited to not lifting, pushing, pulling more than 10 pounds, which is extremely frustrating, but it is what it is. The whole thing, because the abs, they're just so much that happens with the core, and so lifting any amount of weights then puts strain on it, yada yada yada. Long and short, by not, then it helps it heal. If I stress it too much, then it could open up again, and then that would cause all sorts of other problems. So healing is going well. Sometimes I have to wear a stomach brace. Sometimes I don't. I don't have it on now, but yeah, when I walk around, I put it on, and then take it off when I can sit a little bit. But healing's going good. Mentally, I'm doing good. I had another video out where I'm talking about how I'm working on book 3. I'm actually really, really excited about Firebrand book 3. A lot of really amazing stuff is going to happen. If you've come along because of those videos, then absolutely awesome. For those of you who haven't, I've got a couple books out, and yep, absolutely love those guys. But I'm super excited about book 3 because book 3 is actually going to focus on some of the side characters. So it's going to focus a lot on Seth. Seth is one of the main characters with book 3. We get to see what he does as far as being in Vandor and some of his exploits there. We get to see Pretorius and Andreas. They've got a lot of really awesome story that they still are going to experience. David, I'm really excited about David. He joins the army, and so he's going to be doing a lot of really interesting stuff. Paul and Silas, they're going to have a lot of butting heads, and there's going to be a lot of stuff going on with that I'm really excited about. Joshian, we see a little bit more with him. Definitely stuff to stick around and pay attention to. But yeah, I am really excited about what we're going to see with there, because then we're also going to see a bunch of stuff happen with a bunch of the characters that were just introduced in book 1 and 2. I'm not going to give other spoilers on that, but when I said that Crimson Shore was actually my favorite of the 2 books, I'm actually thinking that this one is going to be my favorite of these 3 books. So yes, I'm very excited for getting that done, and I'm very excited for you to read it. Alrighties. Watching on TV and phone. Very cool. Yeah, like I said at the very beginning, I'm kind of experimenting with this live stream idea. So, yeah. Before I would do live streaming on my laptop, and so it had that camera and it had a different perspective. But I was seeing a thing about how they're introducing vertical form live streaming and how these guys will kind of show up in the shorts feed a little bit. So, why not give it a shot? And it's pretty nice. I think it works. Like I said, I've got my laptop right here next to me, and I've got the chat section up on there, and then I can see little comments appear right up in the front. But yeah, so we'll see how this works, and if it works out well, awesome, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, oh well, it's a new thing. It's all good. All right, what else we've got? Okay, well, cool. That's about all the stuff and things I've talked about. So awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining me on this one. This was a lot of fun. If you haven't, make sure that you hit like and make sure you subscribe for more stuff. And yeah, if you keep notifications turned on too, that'll also help to see when new stuff gets released. Otherwise, have a most excellent rest of the day, and take care. That button, there we go.